So since Joe has to only be here, can only be here for a half hour, I thought we might just dive in here. Hopefully Scott and Erica will join in. First thing is I sent out this morning the bios for each of the named speakers. And if you want to take a look at that and give me any feedback on either the content or the picture, we'll get things revised if we need to. We have to do that today, though, to have things printed. So if you get a chance, take a look. Also, in terms of the schedule for the event, Louis Padilla, he contacted me last week, and something has come up. He cannot attend. But Wayne introduced me to Connie Earl, who sounds like one hell of a go-getter, Wayne. She's really, and she's out there on the West Coast. She's with Santa Rosa Family Medicine Residency Program, and she works in an FQHC and has been involved with Integrative Health as a consultant helping FQHC. So, you know, from the point of view of having somebody who can advise FQHCs how to implement this, she's actually probably a better speaker and maybe potentially part of the leadership group. She sounds like just a ball of fire and a really talented person.
Yeah, she's great. So it'd be good to have her involved, especially if we want to have FQHCs involved. So.
Yeah, and I think we do. That's great. So and I have a request there from the graphic artist, Greg Gersh. His request is from the major speakers to let him know, if you can, a list of your key points. He's going to be trying to capture these in images, so the better prepared he is to hear the points that you're trying to make, the more ready he will be to draw that image. So if you could send those to me over the weekend, that would be very helpful.
Larry,
yeah.
Larry, this is Joe. Either you or him send an email directly to me asking for that specifically.
Okay.
That's true of me too. This is Michael. That will trigger my response.
You got it. You'll get that after the phone call. So the other thing is Alan Shaughnessy, who I think everybody knows. He can't be at the meetings because he has to be at NAFCRAG, but he is willing to participate by speakerphone so that he can be connected, and I think he would be a positive force going forward. He sent this item to me: Alexa, what is family medicine? The importance of identifying family medicine's hedgehog concept. And I think he's on to a great idea, trying to challenge family medicine leaders to identify. He's in this new era of the internet and kind of fast food primary care, trying to get the family medicine community to articulate the key element of what makes family medicine so special. And I wanted to ask the group's opinion. Do you think this is something that we could send out to all the people who registered ahead of time to get them thinking coming into the meeting? And perhaps during the group discussion, this might be a focus for some of the discussion. But I wanted to ask people's opinion about that.
Larry, I think that it's very provocative, and I think it's true that that family medicine and primary care, whole person care, is embattled on many corners, from both, the reductionism of how we go about treating people and the subspecialization of that process. But then a lot of people don't realize that maybe the bigger issue on the horizon is this issue of fast food primary care. And I like that term, not that I like the term, but I think it is an accurate description of the forces that are impinging on taking care of whole people, such as, rapid fire telehealth, CVS opening, urgent care or one-stop shop type of things now with Aetna. And the data's there. I mean, the visits to primary care and family medicine are down because people are going to that, especially young people. So at the same time, young people say they want to have, physicians deal with them as more whole people and do more mental health issues and this type of thing. So it's a real dilemma, defining family medicine, defining sort of what its niche is in all this.
Larry, I have a little bit of a complimentary take on what Wayne just said, because I think this battle is bigger and more pernicious than we take it to be. And what I hope to generate in New York is a little bit of radical stuff. Now, Erica, and I hesitate to speak for her, but her experience with the failure of Qualliance is that the healthcare atmosphere in America really didn't want better primary care, didn't want to ultimately invest in better primary care, even if it saved money, because fundamentally we're a wealth industry and not a health industry. And the forces of wealth are really pervasive, and it's big pharma, and I'll also talk about big food. Let me just mention one thing that's going on right now. Not long ago, maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, the U.S. Preventive Service Task Force and others used data that in seniors, blood pressure, high blood pressure, the most common and original of all chronic illnesses, that blood pressures could go up above 140 and still be healthy, that even pressures up to 150 or so, we're going to be okay. And that matches old data from England and others that in the elderly, you're better off with a little bit higher side blood pressure than low blood pressure. Now, that decision cost the pharmaceutical industry billions of dollars. We spend probably $40 to $50 billion a year on blood pressure drugs. So what has happened is the American College of Cardiology and one other specialty organization has now come out and said the blood pressure should be 120 over 80 or less, and anything above 120 over 80 is an elevated blood pressure. Now, that's a death sentence for many seniors, and I'm watching the fallout of this. I had a senior over 80 in my office yesterday who was dizzy and falling because his internist up somewhere where he is in the summer treated him more aggressively, doubled his blood pressure drugs, and gave him hypotension. And I'm seeing this on a regular basis. So right now we have this war because the American College of Physicians and the Academy of Family Physicians are standing by the other data and not accepting this 120 over 80, but our specialty organization, cardiology, and one other one that nephrology or somebody is, which in my opinion, I think is a direct gift to the fact that Big Pharma has bought them. But, I mean, we've got in Elizabeth Rosenthal in American Sickness spells out all of the elements of how it's all about money and corporate power and wealth, and all of that is going to resist any change to killing the many golden gooses that we've got in healthcare to keep it very expensive, very specialized, very drug and procedure oriented, very fee for service. And in many ways, this primary care revolution is really an attack on that, and that's us taking on some pretty big forces.
Yeah, that's right.
So I'm pretty sure Michael would agree with that.
I would, and obviously, for me, the challenge is the political challenge, not so much what we have to do, but how we're going to go about it. When I hear that contending of two expert guidelines. The political analysis says what happens is everybody gets confused about all guidelines, and what that does is it opens the field yet more for people with something to sell. For me, our hedgehog concept is sort of entwined our ability to do and maintain relationship, and our real critical place in leveraging healthcare to build and strengthen democracy. Because what's the end product of that industrialization and the market, the wealth extraction system nature of medicine? The end product of that is the end of democracy itself. In order for democracy to work, we need communities to function. We need people to be active in their communities. And when you strip away, when you concentrate too much wealth in one place, you undo that. So, I love the idea of the hedgehog concept, though I don't mind if we had a little fox along with the hedgehog. Because I think we're going to have to be foxy in order to sort of sort out how to not only defend ourselves, but defend our communities. And Larry, to answer your specific question, yes, I think putting these ideas out is helpful, but I might condense what you sent around considerably, given that the world is very much in a hurry and doesn't have time to read.
Yeah, that's true. Well, and I think the other thing I wanted to just add, and one of the reasons I liked what Alan had said, is that it challenged family medicine to, because we're in some ways we're part of this team. We're raised in, trained in medicine. We learn about all the pills and procedures. We have to, get involved in that process often to make ends meet and that type of thing, because they don't pay for time and nutrition type of stuff. They pay for procedures. So we're part of it.
Yeah. Hi, Erica.
Hi.
Yeah.
Scott and I called
Hey,
a different number
Scott.
that we received.
Yeah. We were having a great conversation on the other line.
By ourselves.
The other line. Wow.
There was another number that was sent out, I think, yesterday.
It was also in the invitation. So anyway, but it's fine. We're here.
Oh, well.
You're here. We're glad that you're here.
Yes. So what we're talking about right now, just to bring it up quickly, so we've got the gang's all here except for Stan, which is why we're recording the call so that he can listen to it afterwards. I announced that we've got Louis Padilla is not coming as a speaker, but Connie Earl, who's a family doc at Santa Rosa Family Medicine Residency Program and an FQHC, is coming, and she's got some wonderful skill sets about how to help FQHCs to move into this world. And I'll be sending an email message out after this call asking each of you to identify the key points that you're hoping to make during your presentation, your conversation with the group, so that the graphic artist is prepared. Right now we're talking about, Alexa, what is family medicine? The idea of sending this document or something like it out to all of the registrants to get them thinking about what is the hedgehog, what is the key element that makes family medicine best in terms of delivering primary care. So that's kind of where we are right now. Anybody want to add anything more? Or Erica, Scott, did you get a chance to look at the that document from Alan Shaughnessy? Alexa, what is family medicine?
I don't know if I got that.
Yeah, I don't remember seeing that. I actually am caught up on emails, which is a small miracle in and of itself. So.
Yeah, I don't think I saw that. I saw everything else.
Okay, I'll send it out. So I'm not sure what I did or didn't do. That some folks got things and other folks didn't. So I apologize for that. So let me just jump forward then to because Joe can only be here for a half hour, a few more minutes. Just during the event, just so that you're aware, the entire day will be video recorded. I've got a fellow coming, so we'll have all of those, both the presentations and the conversation, so that we can share. We'll have to edit it and parse it afterwards so that it's in bite-sized pieces. Also, there will be a scribe present who will be audio recording the presentations, and he will write up a summary of each, not the conversation, but each of the presentations, and he'll share that with the speaker in the months after the meeting. So for the people who prefer to read things, we'll have it in that format. I should also point out, looking at the schedule, to remind you that the Friday event is really part A of what's happening, and there will be some people. I'm expecting somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 to 50 people who will be in there, many of whom I've personally invited for specific reasons, because I think they're ready to actually adopt change. Some of them are system leaders who are looking for new strategies. Some of them are direct primary care practices. Some of them are independent and health system practices. So that's part A. Part B then opens things up to all of the people, the 300 medical students, 200 residents, 250 plus family medicine faculty, and others who will be in the main hall. They'll hear Michael's presentation during his plenary on Friday. They'll hear Wayne and Joe's presentation on Saturday morning, followed by, I think Joe comes first, the new nutrition science. So for the people who want to dive in more to that after the plenary. And then Wayne will do an hour seminar, How Healing Works, using the Hope Note in practice, for the people who want to dive into that. And then in the afternoon, we will be doing the planning for the Learning Collaborative, and we will be joined at that point by Mike Huggy and Mal O'Connor from Family Medicine for America's Health. They are also very interested in this, and if we're able to, even though Family Medicine for America's Health is beginning to wind down, they have some plans to continue the project after May 2019. So I think having them engaged and others who've heard the presentations during the day who may be interested. So that's part B on Saturday. Any comments about that or reactions?
So all of the students and faculty and things are there Saturday, but not Friday. So Friday is basically, to say back to you what I just heard, Friday is basically taking a deep dive in a bunch of ideas from 50 thought leaders who are trying to figure out how we solve the problem, and it's learning the ideas of other folks and inculcating that into our current thoughts. So it's really trying to get synced up and come together in some conversation around what's possible. Saturday is really about residents and students and faculty of groups and sharing, kind of re-sharing a lot of the vision we did on Friday in a smaller, more kind of intellectual, put together a new way of thinking idea. Is that what I just heard you say?
Yep, that's it. Nice summary.
Okay, and then Sunday we're going to take everything that we put together and try to create an initiative to move forward with.
Well, that's Saturday afternoon.
Okay, that's Saturday afternoon. And then Sunday morning, is there anything or no?
So I did not schedule anything because I wasn't sure about people's travel plans. But I will be there on Sunday, and I think others will be there on Sunday. And so, yes, we can continue the conversation. And for those who are there, what I would do is rather than having a big open thing, I'd go back to the leadership group, or there's some people who are going to come along here who are going to say, I want in. Connie Earl has already told me that over the phone. And the question of expanding the leadership group. But on Sunday, I'd go back to a smaller group that's really planning the next 6 months to a year.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Because if we're going to execute anything concrete, that it would need a small leadership group now to talk about what is it that we heard, what kind of responses there been, and what would be the next steps.
Right.
Right.
So I want to throw open a kind of a general question, and Joe, I realize that you have to go, but the long-term goals, from your perspective, you guys are the leadership group. What products would you like to see be created? So you know that things will be video recorded. We'll have these graphic images that will be displayed prominently, throughout the weekend. The graphic artist also takes pictures of them so that we can use those in post-meeting materials. But this group, this process that we're using, what products would you like to see be developed that we can share?
It's interesting to me because what I'm thinking as we've gone through this is what's going to happen is, Friday and Sunday morning, we're going to come up with an agenda that needs to go forward. And we don't know until we come up with that agenda which of the Friday and Saturday presentations we need to encapsulate and distill to take the message forward for us. So it feels like the question you're asking us almost needs to have Friday and Sunday occur before we can even answer articulately.
Good point.
Well, Larry, you and I had spoken about, and I think this group had spoken previously about whether if there was interest in sort of concrete execution within family medicine, within this network of some of these concepts and principles. In other words, if people wanted to get practical and start to try out the spread of lifestyle and integrative health and this type of thing, changes in their practice, then that to me smacks of what I call Learning Collaborative, which is a formal group that says we're going to do this. Usually it's a limited time, and given that these meetings are once a year, it could be done over a year or 6 months. And then I think you had I put together with that idea a driver diagram, which is basically just the framework for how a Learning Collaborative would work. I draw that. I've done things with the IHI, Institute for Healthcare Improvement, which does a lot of these things in the past, and I just drew the framework from that, and I tried to lay out as many things as I've heard on these phone calls that could be put into that. It's usually there's a structure to it. There's an assessment process. People have to join it. They have to commit some time and effort on their part, so that it's something that requires commitment. There's a leadership group, and then there has to be somebody who's an organizer from it, who just coordinates collects all the tools and all that stuff, and then they try things out on a rapid cycle, PSA type of process. They pick from the list of action items and try to implement it in their practice, and they come back, share it with the group. They evaluate it, and there's some tools for that, and then they come back and share it with the group, and then the group, they have either virtual meetings and or face-to-face meetings at a defined schedule, and then they learn from each other, and they begin to see what works, what doesn't work, and begin to implement changes in their practice. So it's a very practical application of some of these things. So if there was interest on Saturday afternoon, and people said, yeah, I want to sign up for this, then at least we'd have a sense of, is it worthwhile investing time and effort trying to create one of these things?
So let me add on to this a little bit. This is Michael. and I want to go back to my intrinsic, extrinsic thinking from the last time we talked. I think what was just described is an excellent way to develop the intrinsic part of this. But I also think we would be well served to think about what I'm calling the extrinsic or movement building piece. From the movement building side, any movement is going to need a national coordinating council as well as local innovation and locally focused work. And my question, I guess, is whether one of the things we want to come out of this is to try to turn this group into a national coordinating council, if we're ready for that, or what kind of work we might want to do to either participate in or build that national coordinating council, which is a critical piece of the movement building that must happen if we're going to succeed.
Yeah, no, I think you're right.
So this is Larry. I'd like to say yes to both of those because I want to see a movement, and I want to see and I think the Learning Collaborative is a really critical piece of the engine, and this is going to grow as people get a chance to as they learn about this. There's going to be more and more people who want to be a part of it. So that engine, I think, is very important. And I think, Michael, your point about the movement piece. And I would also like to say that, in my perspective, this will not succeed as a movement without consumers. And so we have to figure out a way to engage with people beyond the delivery system who can begin to use their agency to influence. And I think those two parts, what you're calling the intrinsic and extrinsic, working together. I think there are organizations out there like the functional medicine people. There are people in the nursing movement. There are people in a whole series of areas who I think will get interested. So I think those are both critical pieces.
Agree, but I'm an operations guy. And at the end of the day, the recognition of who we have to partner with is the second step. The first step is to figure out who the who is and to put together the sort of staff engine that can do that reach out and get that work coordinated. And like I said, I'm not saying that has to be, this group or has to be one group or the other. But if you're looking for a work product, I think one work product ought to be specifying how we're going to get to something like a national coordinating council that can do the organizing work on a national level.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because otherwise, respectfully, I think all the other stuff will sputter. We've been through multiple iterations of how we're going to fix things that ended up getting overly focused on our own process. Family medicine as a specialty. One of the various family medicine renewal processes. The move to academics and teaching. All those pieces were designed to lay the groundwork for developing a healthcare system, but what we lacked was a bigger purview about what it takes to build a movement. And we lacked the commitment to doing it. It's a scary, scary thing to think about because it's a lot of time and commitment. But I just don't see our future without it. I've been in denial about not wanting to say it, do it, or think it for a long time, because it's like, is this really what I want to spend my life doing? So let me just take a second and mention something Larry alluded to in an email that might be a work product, and that is my son taught me about a process called Momentum, which is a social movement incubator that exists someplace around Boston. And what Momentum does, as I understand it, is it takes 3 people, hopefully 3 young people, who are committed to making a movement, and it trains them about how to do it. And it gives them the skills, energy, and connection that's needed to both adequately capitalize and adequately conceptualize the process of movement building. So for me, one work product might be a commitment to work together to find those 3 young people and put them into the Momentum process and do what we need to do to get them there. Again, that's just one idea, but I think we've got to be looking more systemically if we're really going to operationalize these incredible ideas about how to make practices more real, more human, more relevant, and at the end of the day, practices that support democracy instead of support wealth extraction.
This is Joe. Before I leave, I just like to say I love that idea, and I'm excited to hear that such an entity exists. This is only going to happen. There's going to be an awful lot of spontaneous combustion that needs to happen. Hopefully, we're going to generate some critical mass. But I think that identifying a new generation of young leaders who are not going to put up with what's been going on and the way primary care is delivered and the way healthcare in America is being delivered, and are determined to be change agents of this system, both the primary care platform level and in a bigger way. And I think that we should have a whole diversity of things. The consumers will come into it, I think, too. But I don't think a top-down, prescriptive structure that needs to take place like that, I think that can get in the way of some of the spontaneous combustion that I hope occurs. But anyway, I really look forward to New York, and I'm going to have to sign off. Thanks.
Thank you, Joe.
See you in a week.
So, Erica, you've been very quiet.
I'm taking myself. I was on mute, so I didn't interrupt. Make sound. I think that Michael, I'd have to look into that organization. I think that sounds like a really great idea. It's funny. I'm thinking about now I remember being that person, one of those people who were identified as, you're a young leader and you're going to take this forward kind of thing. And, I think that it's been happening, but without a clear direction, without a clear sense of support. I mean, I always felt like I got a lot of cheering on over the course of my career so far, but not what you're talking about, which is, okay, there's a direction we need to head, there's a movement we need to build, and, we're going to train you and equip you to do that. The training and the equipping that happened was not about political change. It was much more general. And it was great, but I think that we're at a totally different place now. And, I think some of what Joe is saying I agree with in terms of not being too prescriptive, but there has been, I think, a lack of a clear direction. I mean, Larry, I keep coming back to that book you had me read about, Bury the Chains, about getting rid of the slave trade. That was a very clear movement. It was like, slavery is bad, and we're going to break the slave trade so we can end slavery. You know what I mean? And they worked on it for decades and decades and decades, and finally succeeded. And it was a dedicated effort. We don't have yet a clear message of what it is we're trying to accomplish. And the one thing I worry about, I mean, I like the focus on practice change and all of that to give everybody something to grab onto and work on on a day-to-day basis. But I really worry that, as Michael is saying, we're going to be doing more of the same without some sort of prescriptive, this is where we need to go. And whoever wants to join that particular endeavor, great, join us. If you don't, this is not the endeavor for you. We don't have to bathe the big tent that includes everybody. But what is it that we are going to try to accomplish? Better primary care is not good enough. You know, we've been doing, you know, good to very good primary care in very difficult conditions for a long, long time. But the problem is that there is no primary care system, and it's inhibited in this country. So in my mind, I don't think it's all that radical to say, you know, to have some sort of prescription like, you know, we need a primary care system. Or, you know, something like, I think crafting some sort of message that's akin to, we need to abolish slavery. Do you know what I'm saying? It's not, our problem is not at the level of slavery, but it's the clarity of message and the ability to say, we need to end this, or we need to have that is critical if we're going to have, you know, some sort of movement or get something that people can get behind. And even if then they say, but I don't know what I can do. I'm just a family doc working for, you know, a practice at a hospital in my community, and I can't do anything else. We say, okay, that's fine. Here's what you can do. You know, you can work on transforming your practice from within. You can work on community organizing. You can work, you know what I'm saying? We need to have something, some point of an arrow that we're organizing behind.
So, Erica, if I can respond, I think that what is going to happen next Friday is that the presentations and the conversation that will follow will lead to what you're saying is necessary. And my product that I would like to see come out of this is, and I have it in here, if one goes to articulate what a primary care-driven healthcare system in the U.S. would look like, who will do the articulating, which I think is at least some of us and some others who would like to be a part of this. But I think with Wayne's presentation, with Joe's presentation, with Scott's presentation, and then some of the other pieces, the models that work, I think we're going to have the core elements to make that argument. Wayne, what do you think?
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I'm listening, and I agree with Erica and Mike. I think having a learning collaborative gives some of the practices something to hold on to, but it's not enough. It is not dealing with the environmental components. It's not building movement necessarily. It's not bringing in consumers, and so we need to figure out how to do that. I think an articulation of the challenges is a useful first step. I'll be frank with you. I think I have done things that have led to national movements, but I actually don't know how to create one. So I'd love to explore that idea, and learn, strategically if we wanted to do this and could garner the growing dissatisfaction with how the welfare industry in health is destroying our health, and how that could be turned into a movement with the proper power behind it to make it have some impact. I'd love to explore that, and I'm all ears.
So this is Michael again. I think after listening, I'm going to argue for two things as outcome on the extrinsic side. One is that we work together to identify the host organization for the Interim National Coordinating Council, so that we commit ourselves to making progress toward that goal. And then we also commit ourselves to identifying 3 to 5 people who are willing to go into the momentum process, and actually help us figure out how to do that movement building and make it real.
when you say 3 to 5 people to do the momentum, this is folks who would do the work. Sort of, you're talking about creating sort of like a backbone organization to actually execute or begin to build that process. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think it's walking on two legs, creating sort of or giving voice to what Eric identified as the need to create a message and almost a brand, and a national presence, coordinating this work nationally. Sort of laying the groundwork so that when the 3 to 5 people come out of something like the momentum process, they have a home and a place to begin work, and also beginning to, kind of create adequate ideology so we all know what it is we're talking about. I mean, I think what we're talking about is building a healthcare system for the United States that's primary care focused and is not for profit. But I leave it to others to refine that message.
I think that there's growing, this is just a side thing, I think there's growing realization in the public sphere about how the profit-driven system is hurting them. It's really interesting. If you look on like Netflix, there's a whole bunch of documentaries about the excesses of our healthcare system and how it's hurting people. And they're fascinating. They're very well done. They're fascinating. It's chilling to watch these things. I mean, you're just horrified. I mean, it's stuff that we know, but, kind of spelling it out in terms of this is the human cost of this system. And I think that there's some real fear and dissatisfaction and disgust that is growing in the public sphere that can be really tapped into. If we can connect the dots for people and say, a big part of the reason all this is happening to people and why this happened to you is because our system is not structured the way it should be. If you had access to excellent primary care that was actually reasonable, where you could sit down and talk to somebody instead of going and getting some procedure done that ruined your life, or taking some drug because a drug rep came in and, convinced this doc they should sell it for them, and all this other stuff, your life would have been very different. And here's, so I think that there are ways to tap into the public that are different than how we've tried to do it before. Instead of trying to say, you deserve a family doc, instead say, terrible things are happening to you and your loved ones, and you're all at risk, and this is why. And this is why we all need to band together and do this. So anyway, just as an aside, I think that that's an important thing to think about.
Eric, I totally agree, but I think the challenge is not only what the message is, but to have a place to stand from which to deliver it. Who is,
Oh, absolutely.
When you say we, I'm going to keep pushing back and say, let's figure out who the we is, how we're going to stand, and how we're going to have continuity over time so that we can be effective and clear voice and provide the leadership that's necessary to get this thing moving.
Right. I agree.
Yeah, I agree. It's not just on the internet, Erica. I mean, if you look at Warren Buffett, the reason that they formed this, this new system that Atul Gawande is supposed to be organizing is because he said the healthcare is I think the term he used is the parasite on the country.
Yeah.
and that's the word he used it. So they
tapeworm.
Get it.
I actually think tapeworm.
Tapeworm, that's right. It's the tapeworm of the country. It's eating everything we eat, right? So, and taking it away from all the other things that we needed. So there's some pretty high-level people that see this. The question, I think, as Michael said, is how do you create something viable that can do something about it effectively?
Scott, I'm going to ask you to weigh in.
Well, I mean, we only got 9 minutes to finish the call. I'm really excited. Eric and I had a great conversation prior to us joining you all, where we were starting to get into, what would the structure of this be, how would it work, and so, I think that next week is going to be incredibly dynamic and exciting. Secondly, I'll say that there's a book called Can't Buy Me Like by Doug Levy, and basically he did it is a lot about the technology of starting a movement. And basically, of course, what you do is you create an inspiring story and message, and then you give it away. You literally put it out there and let the marketplace move it, and you can't come from the creators. The creators just get to create the inspiring, touch, move, inspire, and motivate the masses to participate, and then they give them the vehicle to go participate on. And so it's called Don't Buy Me Like. It's Doug Levy. It's a very interesting book, and he, talks about a couple of examples of how they did that. So, again, I think it's going to be a great dynamic repartee, and I appreciate the focus on actually coming away with something that's going to touch, move, inspire, that we can give away, and we have young minds that are leading it, and that we, as the old farts in the group, can make sure that we are keeping it moving in the right direction.
So just a couple comments. Just so there's some people who will be at the meeting. There's a young family doc who just graduated from the residency program in Overlook, New Jersey, a year ago, and he's called Dr. Mike, and he's figured out how to access the media. He has 3 million followers on Instagram, and he's now got a side company. He's still seeing patients, but he's got a side company that's helping him develop. He wants to be the next Sanjay Gupta. He's going to be at the meeting, and he's coming because he's intrigued by the ideas. He's primarily focused on millennials, but he's been on the Ellen DeGeneres show. He's been on a bunch of different things, and as far as I can tell, he's staying true and not selling out. T.R. Reed, who I think you folks know, he can't be there this weekend because he has a board meeting that he has to run at home, but he told me when I met with him face-to-face, he said, I'll write anything that needs to be written, just keep me involved. So all of these recordings and materials, Wayne, I gave him a copy of your book when I met with him. He loves what's going on. So I think there are, the whole media strategy, and then the consumer piece, I think will over time be connected. But I'm thinking that we've got pretty good consensus for right now of the kinds of what we're hoping to achieve, at least through the weekend. I'll put those on paper. And I would also say I've always believed that family physicians as generalist experts, you get the best and the brightest. And pardon me if I'm, how do you say this? I'm not trying to flatter you. I'm just trying to say you get the best and the brightest in family medicine together and take the wisdom and experience that you have and use that as a driving force. So I'm agreeing with Michael that we need both the intrinsic and the extrinsic, but I think this leadership group and what it will grow into is a critical piece that we should not underestimate the value of that. So this has now been our third call, and I'm feeling pretty confident that this experience next weekend is going to go very well.
Well, Larry, thank you for putting us together and for giving us direction and inspiration.
Yes, you're here.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
It's going to be great.
So
see you next Friday.
Recommendation is, everybody, I don't know about you, but I'm Thursday night. I have a function to celebrate one of our past board members one of our board members leaving the board. But after that, I will be in the bar, and if you have a chance, stop by. We'll share a drink, and people get connected face to face. I sent out the bios. If we don't have your picture in it, it's because we didn't get your picture. If you want to send it to us, we'll get it into the bios documents that will be handed out to everybody. Scott will get your new picture that you sent this morning. We'll get that in there. And if there's anything else, feel free to text me, call me. I really want this to succeed.
Sounds great.
Thanks.
Good.
All right. See you next
See you next week.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.